The shift in vendor relationships was interesting in some ways, and it was not, as you might expect, that there was like, okay, we're going to wildly curtail or wildly advance our spending with vendors. There was a suggestion that perhaps there would be a little bit more spending, but generally, I think people were thinking, yeah, it would be pretty much the same, or maybe just a little bit more. Just to note this, because it's worth noting, that was not a suggestion that there might be, because there would be more spending, that there would be more vendors. Quite the contrary, there is a suggestion that people might be hunkering down a little bit, and they would be concentrating their resources with a fewer number of vendors who were tried and true, who were trusted, and who could fulfill the role of partnership. And that was really the story here. It had to do not with greater spend, but with the increased expectations of the vendors that pharmaceutical companies were dealing with. Here again, if you remember back to that the quote from Medical Marketing and Media, it's very clear. There's greater expectations of vendors. How those are managed might be very individual to the pharma company, but the general trend seems to be you have to be a player and a partner with us. In the past, there have been some questions about whether vendors can be trusted to do some primary research, partly because of the confidentiality that often moves around or gets attached to the work of market research. But very clearly, those barriers are dropping, and that to the extent that you can bring vendors in-house to be able to help conduct that broader set of strategic activities, the better off that you will be. Which brings us to how market research thinks about its value and its role and how it can be measured. And here I want to make a basic distinction, which I think you'll find quite reasonable, because this goes way beyond just market research. There is a lot of thinking about metrics in business, especially around areas that are tough to measure and where there's no direct one-to-one correspondence between performance and output. And in many cases, that's true of a lot of very important activities. But what tends to happen with a lot of functions within business is that the business comes up with a set of what I would call just simply internal metrics. These are things that the senior leader within an area, market research, for instance, would apply, to the staff. And so, we could say, how'd you do? Did you deliver your project on time and on budget? Did you complete X number of projects? These are what I mean by internal metrics. That is, they apply inside that function. And what I want to tell you, and what the headline is here, is that they're wholly insufficient for the organization. They are great for the function, but they fail miserably in being able to demonstrate value for the organization. And so there's a set of external metrics that often either needs to be developed or enforced, or to which market research can aspire to, where you're actually thinking about how market research affects the business. So action taken by the business based on particular market research results, a specific impact on brand performance, the number of activities or changes in a market or a brand that have been anticipated by a market research function. And so the real point here is that if you're going to be thinking in particular about how you can fulfill this new notion or newer notion of consulting partner, of strategic presence within the organization, there need to be corresponding metrics that allow you to demonstrate that value to senior management and not just an internal measure. The key metrics that were reported to us in the survey were things like, timely and actionable insights, the impact on brand performance, performance against defined, how well does the information provided assist in critical decision making, and so this was part of that, insight management, idea that, we're here not just to check off the elements that are required of us, so many projects, delivered on time, everything was neat, wonderful PowerPoint presentations, good communication, but the actionable recommendations used to impact business performance. We asked the question in a slightly different way, and part of why we I think got such rich and powerful responses to this. We would just ask the senior people in market research, well, okay, what would constitute a good year for you? And we got lots of different responses, and they were very, very sharp-sighted. And we grouped them into these three areas, and they are pretty much in order of the intensity of the response. So just better decision-making, the kind of thing where he said we generate strategy-transforming insights. That's a good year for us. Or our researchers was used to guide strategic decision-making, and the company made money. So there was a connection to the actual business outcome there. The results, the impacts on business, well, we had several large insights that changed strategy or otherwise improved the way that we do business. So it's not that we got a great response to our marketing research work, is that we move the needle for the business. And again, same sort of thing, groundbreaking research that has a significant impact on one or more brands. And then lastly, you can't ignore this sort of thing. Yeah, we want to keep our internal customers happy, and the projects have helped address the most important issues. When asked about these changes in metrics, because to some extent, and I think you'll get this feeling, there are some aspirational aspects of these responses, because it was future oriented. They say, yeah, we'll need to be seen even more as strategic partners and not just deliverers of data. We should be more proactive in proposing projects that look longer term. And again, moving away from this idea of order taking, but that we are actually trying to position ourselves to take the lead in the kind of research that gets done. Metrics are more closely aligned with functional areas. Emphasis on finding new ways to uncover vital information for less cost, and more emphasis on measurable results, that is measuring the programs that these things lead to, and making actionable recommendations. So those were the basic dimensions on which we charted this change from traditional to more evolved state, and this is just simply a way of summarizing some of the areas of improvement that would lead to this sort of future market success, and there are 5. And so internally, yeah, be seen and heard. That is, you can't shy away from the responsibility if you're really going to step up and engage in these strategic level conversations and activities. You can't just be putting out fires and kind of ducking responsibility, but actually actively seek and seize opportunities to develop this strategic profile for market research.